gridirons to the courts, to the links, the fast turns, and the home run. Heard only on Source Radio Network. You're now listening to Sports Tuesday with your host, Steve Manderson.
Good evening, Source Nation, and welcome to SRN Live Television. I am your host, Steve Manderson of Sports Tuesday. Now, I hope everybody had a great day today. Hope everybody had a great week last week and a great weekend. Okay, my featured guest tonight is a big baseball fan, to say the least. Been around it basically all her life. She is the niece of the legendary owner of the Oakland A's. You know him as Charlie O. Finley. And those championship years from 72, 73, 74 with the Oakland A's, and what stories from those years, and I remember them very well. And she has a book out entitled FINLEY BALL that tells the story with her uncle and her father. Okay, Carl Finley. All right, let me bring on right now Nancy H. Finley.
Here
Nancy,
I am.
how are you?
Oh, great.
How
Thank
are
you for having me.
Well, I thank you for coming on. I just had to have you on the show. I remember those days when your uncle owned the A's, and they used to call it a circus back then, and the things that went on, in-house fighting, Barnum and Bailey, in-house fighting and all like that. But the thing is that was the thing. The team won despite all of that. It reminded me, being a Yankees fan, it reminded me when reading the book, and I said, you know what, this is a lot like the Bronx Zoo back in the 76, 77, 78, in those years, where, you know, we won as well. And, yeah, the one common denominator is one Reggie Jackson. So it seems like everywhere he went, there was always a problem. But,
but
yeah,
Vinny,
that's how it was.
You know, I look at it like
key.
We are like, in a way, in a parallel universe with the Yankees, because they're on one end of the spectrum. People look at them like the wealthiest team, the winning, and then look at us like the newcomer and a little odd. But we won. It's interesting. Most of my father's good friends in baseball were former Yankees. And
yes.
Yeah, and then Dad hired Billy Martin at the owners' meeting in '79 to come work for us. So we had a lot in common with the Yankees.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. But as I said, the thing is, you brought championships, so that was the thing.
I have to bring that home. Yes.
Yes. Now let's talk about the days when you guys were in Kansas City, known as the Kansas City A's. Now, your uncle was an insurance salesman.
He started out in a kiosk for Sears, selling Wards, I think, or Sears, and he started his own insurance company.
Now, how did that pretty much lead into his desire to eventually own a baseball team?
Great question. He always loved sports, and when he made a lot of money through insurance, he realized that he wanted to own a sports team, especially baseball. So he found out that the Kansas City A's were for sale through an estate auction. The owner had just died suddenly. So he showed up at the auction, and he was a great poker player. And he won. He won the team, and no one expected him to show up. There was only one other. And, I always say he should have done his homework on the movers and shakers in that town. But he showed up, he won, and he put $500,000 of his own money into that stadium the first season. Upgrades. He put a petting zoo in, picnic tables, paint, all these different colors. He had the mechanical rabbit Harvey in, and he was just excited. He was excited because he could. The Yankees had a larger field, and he felt that that was unfair, so he moved the fence. They called it the pennant porch, and they said he couldn't do it. So fairness was a big thing with us.
Now, your father, Carl Finley, how did he get involved with your uncle in the whole baseball thing?
I remember, yes. Dad was minding his own business, and he was a high school principal in Dallas. Had his MBA. He wanted to go up the corporate ladder in education. And after the first season in '81, Charlie was battered. It all happened in August. Excuse me, not '81, '61. It all happened August '61. And that's when things hit the fan. And Charlie was just hammered. So he talked to my grandfather a lot, who lived in Dallas, and Granddad recommended that Charlie have my dad come in, because Dad was a business person, and Dad also had a degree in journalism. So Charlie came down to Dallas and met with Dad, and it took about 6 months for him to talk Dad into leaving one career for baseball. Neither one had any experience. And Dad, what he would do is Charlie would have plane tickets. What he would do is Charlie would have plane tickets waiting at Love Field every Friday night for Dad to fly up and just get a taste of it. And Dad would come back Sunday night and then go back to the high school the next day, like nothing happened. So with all that glamour up in at the baseball team, inside the stadium and getting to be side by side, Dad decided to make the move. So he made the move in '62, summer of '62. Never lived anywhere outside of Texas. So Dad was 37. So that's quite a move to change careers and go into something you don't know about. In fact, one of Dad's high school students told me that Dad never gave a reason for resigning, never said it where he was going. So I figured he probably thought he might need to come back. So from 62, and when the team was bought, season of 61, they make the playoffs in 71. So that's fast.
That is. That is. Now,
not having a
Now, during that time, a player by the name of Satchel Paige actually pitched for the Kansas City Athletics, and that must have been a great experience for him because he was into the Negro Leagues. He followed the teams, and the most famous one, of course, was the Kansas City Monarchs, where, in my opinion, I think every legendary Negro League player played for the Kansas City Monarchs. And Satchel pitched for Kansas City at the age of 59.
Yes, and you know what? This did not fit in my book. There's over half of my manuscript that did not fit, so I might have an expanded edition later. But one thing that didn't go in was we brought Satchel in a helicopter as a surprise with a nurse. We brought him to land in the middle of the stadium in Kansas City. And then when he got out of the helicopter, everyone clapped. But Mr. Page said it was the scariest ride he'd ever had to see that grass coming up.
Wow.
Yeah. But we had a rocking chair waiting for him and a nurse, and we wanted to let him finish his career that way. It had something to do with just another game left, and he would receive a pension. So, but can you imagine a helicopter bringing Satchel Paige in?
Well, from what I heard of Satchel, he would love that. He loved the spotlight and the personality that he was. A helicopter coming in on a helicopter would be pretty much his style.
I don't think
that didn't surprise me.
He, in fact, I don't think he'd ridden in one before, but but once he was in, hey. So it was very dramatic, and then the year before that we had the Beatles appear. We were trying to be like the Super Bowl, entertainment. And
well, I tell you, back then the Beatles were, once they came to America, they were the rage of America then. So yeah, to have the Beatles there, I knew the city of Kansas City would have been like, oh my God, an experience of a lifetime to have them. So
I remember, I remember screaming. And by the way, in the late 70s, we hired Kurt Flood part-time in our front office.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Yes, and we just felt like, I heard that after his litigation that that may not be popular, but we did it because we wanted to give everyone a chance. And I remember.
Tell us about the mascot. No, go ahead, because we're going to talk about the mascot. The original mascot was an elephant.
Yes.
And it changed over to the mule.
Yes, we have the elephant on stationery up through 64. We inherited that and just kept it. But then with our petting zoo, the governor of Missouri gave us a mule, as mostly to go in the petting zoo. And that remember hearing the family talking about a new mascot. What would it be? And then that was just well, let's use this as a mascot. So didn't take much to think up the name. That was that was a huge mule. A lot of people think of mules as like donkeys, but that mule was big.
Now came the move from Kansas City to Oakland. What was the reasoning behind the move to go out west? I mean, you were out to Oakland. How did that all start?
We had, in '61, when the feud started between Charlie and the newspaper editor, because the newspaper editor was who wanted to buy the team in the first place, and Charlie won. So Charlie found out that Kansas City was letting the Chiefs have the stadium lease at $1 a year. So that didn't help because he wanted to be treated the same way. And so in '67, the new lease was coming up. And I remember Dad and Charlie went to a meeting and really thought they were going to reduce the lease amount. Instead, it was raised to over $1 million a year. And they couldn't afford that. And it was, I remember Dad said it was a sick feeling. But what Dad had to do was start calling around to see who had a ready-to-move-in stadium now. It was, and Dad was hoping that Dallas would. But they were 2 years behind. Oakland was the only place that had a stadium already built, thanks to Al Davis and the Raiders. And Oakland had been calling to remind us of that. Well, we're here if you need a place to go. But I know Dad and Charlie didn't really think we were going to have to move. Plus, wherever we moved, Dad had to live. Charlie didn't. So Dad ran it on site. And so that's what happened. We had to get out pretty quick.
The people, the fans in Kansas City, how did they take that?
Well,
take the move.
The news made it sound like we wanted out. In fact, the time we were there, articles kept appearing saying that we didn't like the fans, we wanted to move, which was not true. But that was really the only bad thing the editor could say, because there wasn't anything in the closet, any skeletons he could find. So if people thought it was that we wanted to leave and we took our chance, but that wasn't true. I know that because someone showed Dad an article that appeared in an Oakland newspaper in '64 that said we were packing up. That wasn't true. So it's like it went out on the AP sort of just to put it in everyone's mind. But I know it didn't help when Charlie would say, well, if Kansas City doesn't give me the same as it does the Chiefs, then I'll start looking for a place. That didn't help either because that was more of a bluff. But So, yeah, and Dad used to try to prepare Charlie on how to deal with the press, and he'd start out just fine, then someone would push his button. But that's what happened is Kansas City, people thought we just abandoned them. And but interesting, after we came out here, we just exploded. We were building.
You did.
Yeah, we were building in Kansas City. I could see what we were going through looking back. And then out here, we spread our wings and just went up.
Because if I recall, when Reggie Jackson was a rookie, he was a rookie when you guys were still in Kansas City.
Yes.
You're right.
67, because my parents divorced because of sports entertainment. and it was late '67. So I had to move back to Texas with Mom, but then I came out here in late '69, early '70, and Dad had gained sole custody of me. So Dad said, I want to tell you we have new players who are going to be stars, Reggie Jackson and Vida Blue. And yes, and they came on board right after my parents divorced. And I remember Vida's year in '71. I mean, right after I came out, he was such a star, such a celebrity.
Now, how old were you at the time when they made the move from Kansas City to Oakland? Reggie Jackson and Vida Blue became major stars. How old were you then? You were 8 then.
8, yeah. Wow. I was 7 when my parents divorced. That stadium was like Disneyland to me. My cousins and I in Kansas City, we would run around. We couldn't sit still, and it was just a fun time. And then I remember Dick Green's ex-wife babysat me back then in Kansas City. So that was my players were Hunter, Green, Salbando, and Campy. And those were the ones Campy. And then that's why Dad was telling me when I moved out here who our newer players were. And he had, when I was, my first day at the Coliseum, he had me in the back and he would bring people in to see me. And I was always Carl's little girl, but it was just, I'm an only child. So I was at the Coliseum when I wasn't in school. And I would bounce from office to office to see if someone needed something to do. But I was there during the playoffs and World Series, and it was just, to me, that was reality.
Now, at that time, did you get to meet Reggie personally?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was often in the same room. I didn't think anything. I remember, like the front office, he would go in and talk to Charlie's secretary, and she would have to tell him something, some administrative policy or something. Sometimes he walked out and it didn't look too happy.
But, now that's not surprising.
That's So that's the kind of stuff I knew. Like it was when they came into the front office, it was just because they were taking a break, or they were told to come up and discuss something with someone.
Yes. Now every time you mention Campy, Burkamp and Harris, every time I think about him, he was a great player, great leadoff guy. I remember, I think it had to be the '72 playoffs.
Yes.
Oakland and Detroit, and I'll never forget this. And it was in Oakland. He was at the plate, and Detroit's pitcher was Laren LeGros, and he hit Kemper on his foot. He got hit by the pitch, and you figure, okay, gets hit by the pitch, go to first base. He stands there, and the next thing he does, he takes his bat, and he flings it sideways. The thing came at LeGros like a propeller, and almost hit him in the head. And that started one of the wildest scenes. Billy Martin was the manager of Detroit then, and it took like 3-4 people to hold him back because he wanted to take swings at Campaneris. And I was like, oh, my God. I never saw anything like that before.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, well, a lot of players are warned that what do they call it, beamed, that sometimes it's on purpose.
Yeah.
And and so I know I'd heard about that, and I used to wonder, well, how do you know accident on purpose? So I know that probably went through Campy's mind, and Campy was out to win. He was so loyal. I could understand. Right. I mean, the temper, the stress.
But I didn't think he had it in him. That was crazy what happened, and he got suspended, and I think he was suspended for the rest of the playoffs, and I think he missed Game 1 of the World Series and came back, I think, in Game 2 or something like that. But that was a great that was wild.
He was so respected just because of how intense he was and how he would go as far as he did, and he was for the group. He wasn't, he was for the group.
Now the 3 years that the championship years, 72, they beat the Cincinnati Reds. It went 7 games, and
73.
It was a team. 73 against the Mets, and then there was 74 against the Dodgers.
Yeah, not 7.
The least. Yeah, but the Dodgers one really wasn't as exciting as the first 2. Well, with 72, it was famous because 2 future Hall of Famers was on their last legs, and it was great to see them get a ring, and that's Billy Williams and Willie McCovey. And they wound up, they were like reserve players. They actually, I think Billy started 1 or 2 games, and Willie did the same thing. But that was a great time there. And then there was the 73, which to me was the more famous because it was the Mets. They played a team that should not have been in the World Series to begin with. And it featured, Yogi as manager of the Mets, and a manager that pretty much was was at odds with your uncle, and that's Dick Williams, and he managed his final games. He came out a champion, but it was the last game he would manage for Oakland. What exactly happened between Dick and your uncle?
You know what? He gave his notice to resign before the World Series, by the way. The press made it sound like he just quit. But
okay.
Yeah, he said he wanted to go back to the East Coast. But actually, Charlie had he liked Williams. He'd become friends with him as far as he was concerned. In fact, he told Dad he broke his own rule because he used to say, don't become close to your employees, just because. So he asked Dad if Dad could be the one that he would use to say, well, I have to ask Carl if this is okay, that kind of thing. So Dad would keep his distance from Williams because of that. So they did this role reversal, and so Charlie really liked Williams, but the World Series leading up to that, Charlie had a heart. I don't know if it was a heart attack, but angina. He had to go into the hospital in August, 73. So, but Mike Andrews called him and asked. He wanted to ask if something he heard from another team was standard. Andrews had been released from the White Sox, and was calling
Uh-huh.
for a job. He didn't call us for a job. He just remembered Williams and called, asked how he was doing, and Williams asked what he was up to, and he said he had been playing DH, first DH for the White Sox. So Williams said, I've been looking for a DH, and how about if you come over to us? And Andrews said, I would love to. So Williams asked Charlie to call him. And Charlie took about a week. He didn't call him right away. Charlie had good instincts. And apparently when Charlie called Andrews, he mentioned something he saw on TV when Andrews was playing against us. That the first season, he noticed an error. And he asked Andrews, what's up with that? And Andrews just said, oh, I'm fine, probably psychological or so, just joking. And so Charlie laughed. They laughed it off and didn't commit. So then Andrews pursued it. And finally, at Williams' urging, Charlie agreed to sign Andrews for the last half of the season. I have the original contract. Yeah, I have that contract. And so it wasn't Charlie scouting Andrews. That's another myth. He never scouted him. And I always say Charlie's instinct was right on because he should have gone with his initial instinct. And he was questioning what he watched on TV, what he saw with Andrews. He did it as a favor to Williams. So I was at that game that was tied up, and I was there, and I was looking at Charlie's face. And what I went by in the book was I have depositions of Andrew's own statements when he sued us, and it's under oath. So I actually use a lot of Andrew's own statements in my book. I don't go by, well, I heard this, I heard that. I go by his statements, and they've changed. Things have changed because some books say Charlie was screaming. Well, he wasn't, and Andrews admits that. The only person who was screaming after that was Williams. He was in his office with the door closed. But I don't know who was in there with him, but I remember that night I heard Williams screaming. But I was running back downstairs to the post party. We always had it ready no matter what. And then I was going back upstairs because Dad and Charlie's secretary were there, and they were waiting because Andrews had not been checked by the doctor when he was hired. The contract says every player will have an initial checkup exam. And so right after the game, Charlie asked to see the results of the exam. Well, there weren't any. Why not? So why not? So that was cause for concern. So we asked Andrews to report to the doctor downstairs in the clubhouse because he needed to have his exam. All other players did, but this wasn't something we told the other players. No one knew really what was going on. But Andrews admits that he did not want to go in and be seen by our doctor. So that took about 45 minutes. He finally did go in, and we had an orthopedist, and then we had a regular doctor. So the orthopedist did find something, and he wrote that down, and then that's when Charlie met with Andrews. He did not fire Andrews. He marked him as disabled, but he said, I hope you're going to join your teammates in New York and get on that plane and go to New York with them. And he said he didn't want to, just wanted to go home. Yeah. So then apparently on his flight home, he was angry and he wrote a press release. We never saw it. He sent it straight to the press in New York and to the commissioner's office. So Yeah, and who knows? I mean, we didn't get to see it, but but our players didn't know what happened when they were on the plane. He wasn't there, but Dad said that for legal reasons, Dad wasn't going to announce what went on because it was private, you know.
Right.
So the players are thinking, "Oh, he's been fired. You know what happened?" So it's like, yeah, and then I remember the press was asking the players, "What do you think happened?" And so it boiled up into something it wasn't. But Dad used to say that he said we should rise above it. I would ask, "Are you going to defend it?" And Dad would say, "No, we want to rise above that." But you know, looking back in this field, I think you do have to defend yourself.
Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah, Dad was thinking like a high school principal. So you know, that is another reason I had to write my book, because I was seeing so many, even recently, like things about Andrews, and they always morph into something else, or it changes. And I just thought, you know what? Anytime you have statements under oath, that's what you go by.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Catfish Hunter made history as the first free agent in Major League Baseball history. That was kind of tough, and I know it was that decision for Catfish was very tough on your uncle. I remember that. It got kind of ugly.
It was, because Charlie was known for paying late. He was an insurance man, and he always knew how far you could go with things. So that wasn't new. He'd done that before. But when we started winning, Dad would tell me, I would see these men in suits, and Dad would say, well, they want to talk to the players, and they want to tell them what they can do for them. Our players started being approached by people who said they could make them stars, or they deserve better than where they were. And this one agent saw this with Catfish. He said, hey, you can get out of your contract because this is late. And I know that was difficult for Catfish, but he did it, and whether, you know, it was good for him financially. But we had an honor for him when we found out he had Lou Gehrig's. And we were in a private room, and there wasn't a dry eye with our players. It was like they were finally together again. And I could see it was, I mean, I know a large part of him didn't want to leave, but yet he was really torn. And if you know, that worked out really, really well for his family. I think he, too bad he couldn't have let Dad work on Charlie. Dad used to fight with Charlie a lot about late payments. And it did come back to bite him.
I tell you though, Catfish Hunter, it was you guys lost, but it was our gain here in New York, and he was very instrumental in our winning ways at that time, and one of the nicest gentlemen.
He is wonderful. In fact, I'm just thinking, when the team was bought by Finley in Kansas City was known as they called it a triple A for the Yankees. Apparently they would ship the good players back to New York, and this is what I heard. And then, you know, I'm just thinking it sort of went in a circle, and that started happening again with Reggie, Catfish in the mid-70s. Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
I know.
I'll tell you.
Wow.
And then there was that time when then time went on, and the Red Sox in '75 ended your guys'
Oh.
World
Oh.
Series streak. I remember that. And then it was a while before you guys got it back together, and
Yes.
then Billy Martin resurfaced as a Oakland A's manager, and a rookie by the name of Ricky Henderson came
Yes.
along, and
We hired him
he.
in yeah, he was 77. We scouted him in 77.
Mm, but I tell you, he was a great player.
He
For
was.
sure.
He was, and I have our roster for 77, but mostly 78, 79, and we are cultivating. We are rebuilding, and that was the goal. We just didn't want to tell the press because we didn't want to be under a microscope. But
Right.
we did it. We did it, and darn it, we had just sold the team. It was. I don't really. I think it surprised us. And interesting. I don't think Billy would have come on board if Charlie had been the one wanting to hire him. But Dad was attending the owner meeting solely on his own. Charlie stopped because he was in litigation with Bowie Kuhn. So. Yeah. So, but I was when I saw us get to the '81 playoffs, and I'm thinking,
yes,
wow, here we go again.
Cause we had to play you guys in the ALCS. I remember that. I said, "Oh boy, Billy's coming back to New York," and that was it was a great series too. But that was typical, and that's when Billy Ball started, and especially with Ricky Henderson, because he had a great leadoff hitter that had the combination of power and speed, and it also had what was the craziness about the time that Billy was manager. The pitching staff was outrageous. He truly overused the pitching staff. They were burnt out by the end of the year.
I know. They're on. I have that cover, Sports Illustrated. It shows our pitchers. I mean, can you imagine? Now you see a pitcher might go 6 innings and that's it.
Yeah. Compared to what Billy did with pitchers, every one of them must have had at least 15 complete games apiece.
I know,
but they were they definitely overused at that time. I mean, as I said, compared to what baseball is now, where pitchers only go 5-6 innings, and they call that a quality start, which I find utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. And then they get in. They seem to be injured if they go longer, or they're.
True.
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear a lot of that. I don't know if players just didn't speak up, but their shoulders were built up.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. One of the final questions that I want to ask you, and I thank you very much for coming on. How do you see the future of the Oakland A's as you guys move on? How do you see their future? Do you see them as a contending team within the next maybe 2-3 years or so?
I hope so. I see that with the positive outlook I'm finding, and maybe if they know they'll stay in Oakland where they are, or maybe even build a stadium right on the water to like the Giants did, which was very successful. A lot of it also depends on the way MLB goes because they're under those rules. And there have been a lot of changes since us. I have our rules, our contracts, but things have changed. So, and I hear MLB is and there have been a lot of changes since us. I have our rules, our contracts, but things have changed. So, and I hear MLB is always trying to find what the fans want and make those changes. So I think it depends on that delicate balance. But right now, the way the A's are heading, it looks good.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, unfortunately, we are out of time. But I thank you very much for coming on the show. You know, you are always welcome here on Sports Tuesday anytime. I love the book.
We're so knowledgeable. Thank you.
Well, listen, I go back and I remember those times in the 70s, and those 3 years were fun times. I know for you guys, but you know, the way you had great players, and you had Joe Rudy. You mentioned Sal Bando, and great hitters and great pitchers, and and
oh my God!
Yes,
and I think
yes.
I'm wondering if we're the only team with a live mascot. I don't know. I
think so. I think so because you're the only ones that had a baseball that came out of the ground. I remember that. So that was different. That was different. So, but it was fun baseball back then, and your uncle was a pioneer, and because of it, let everybody know where they can get the book.
Yes, it's on Amazon, FINLEY BALL on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and I believe my website has a link. It's my website is OaklandAthleticsHistory.com.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Well, Nancy, this was fun.
Thank you. You have great questions.
Thank you very much. And I definitely will love to have you back on the show, probably with your next book. You're welcome. We can have you back and still talk about this one because there was a lot of stuff, a lot of history with the Oakland A's back then. Right. So listen, until next time, listen, you take care, and God bless.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Source Nation, that was Nancy H. Finley, the niece of the legendary owner of the Oakland A's back in the 60s and 70s, Charlie O. Finley. And the name of the book is entitled FINLEY BALL. Great reading for you baseball fans like myself. The website to check out the history of the Oakland A's is OaklandAthleticsHistory.com. All right. So that was great. That is great. On that note, that is it for me. And again, want to thank her for coming on the show. Definitely want to have her back. So that is it. So
Get at me for beats, yo.